So, acolytes. Devs edit again. A bad take. That's self-destructive. Now, the thing is, Ace sits on it. It will be entertaining. And let's just see what this is about. But Matt Burnett and he made the only way to save America is to regulate conservatism. Yeah, it's a leftist. Of course, you would say that. People need to take action to force Republicans to come closer to the center and bend their more extremist beliefs and speeches before they fully turn the country into early 90s Germany. This is such a dumb take. The only thing that I would agree with is, and hear me out before you think that I went full lefty, the only thing that has a speck of truth in it is that you always, no matter the side, you always should take care of your extremists. Extremists are bad. No matter what you do, no matter which side you're on, the extremist side is bad. You have to keep this one under control. Because we see the leftists, how they behave, how this extremist side behaves, and we don't want that on the right. So this spec is true, but the rest, bollocks. It's already just something that hides behind a speck of truth. It just wants to enrage people.
Hello everyone, Ace here, and today let's talk about Short Fat Otaku, aka Dev, an individual I have covered many times on the channel already,
Hell yeah.
And yet people still want me to cover him some more, which is perfectly understandable given the kinds of takes that Dev puts out frequently, such as the one we're going to be talking about today. Specifically, let's talk about how Dev thinks we need a ministry of truth in order to save liberalism. The story behind this whole take began on July the 22nd, when Delusional Takes uploaded this image of an individual stating, quote, "The only way to save America is to regulate conservatism. People need to take action to force Republicans to come closer to the center and ban their more extremist beliefs and speeches before they fully turn the country into early 1940s Germany." To which Dev responds by stating, quote, "This one is true." To which Mooncake responds by stating, quote, "Wait, I thought you were all about freedom of speech and expression though. That was the point of the whole keep the rape game up on Steam argument you had." Dev responds by asking, quote, "Yes, how are these positions not in alignment?" To which Mooncake responds with, quote, "I might be confused here then. Are you agreeing that it's delusional or agreeing with the person in the photo? Forgive me, I'm a little retarded broski." To which Dev responds with, "Oh, I'm agreeing with the person in the pic." Mooncake replies by stating, quote, "Okay, so then they do go against one another."
Okay, I have to say one thing. Mooncake, humble as fuck. Love it.
One is keeping up things you don't like because it is free speech, and the other is banning things you don't like even if it's free speech. I don't like far-right people, but I'd rather bring them to the marketplace of ideas than ban them. Dev responds with a quote tweet of himself from another thread, which we will be getting into.
Not on the hating part, but I agree, bring to the marketplace of ideas. That
Specifically, Dev states, quote, "1. Free speech doesn't apply to blatant lies, and that is one thing the right peddles in abundance right now. 2. I am more interested in the terrible actions of the right now, as they are currently wielding power to do bad things." Follynomics responds by stating, quote, "Free speech
No, I'm just gonna tell you how I see it. This is such a bad take, because you already have just, again, the left did way worse over a longer period of time, and right now I don't live in America, so I don't see the immediate thing or the immediate result of the right getting the power right now, or the pendulum is just swinging back. And I'm sure there are bad actors. Don't get me wrong. Everywhere are bad actors. As I said, as long as you keep the extremists in place, and the right seems to do a good job right now of that. Yeah, sorry, no, that's the better option. It is what it is.
Does indeed apply to blatant lies because there is no...
And the second thing, no, free speech doesn't apply to blatant lies or to threats. Yes, threats are also. It to at least, well, I mean, I know those two things. In America, now we get different because it also doesn't apply in Germany to actually speaking out your mind about certain things. You know, about very certain things.
Better arbiter of the truth than free inquiry and rigorous public examination. I am only an expert at my one small niche, and even I have seen other more qualified experts misrepresent data, quote dated statistics, etc. To which Dev responds by stating, quote, there is no better arbiter of truth than free inquiry and rigorous public examination. This sounds nice, but is ultimately untrue. People are not naturally truth-seeking. They are pleasure-seeking and will accept comfortable lies over harsh truths. Follynomics responds by stating, quote, and
by the way, I just want to make it clear, controlling your side, the extremists have to get out, controlling lies. Both sides have power-seeking monsters in them. We just have to squash them before they come out. That's the problem with the entire.
The council you elect to determine what is truth not also be made up of the same humans. What is a better test of truth than a proposition's ability to rigorously withstand any attack, even from the comfort-seeking? Shielding it from criticism is not a viable substitute. Dev responds with, quote, all true, and yet lies are not criticism, and liars have used this to promoter falsehoods. The line between good faith debate and bad faith subversion is fuzzy, but we can recognize when it has clearly been crossed. Follynomics replies with, quote, truth is a funny thing, especially after one reads Kuhn and some history. E.g. Giordano Bruno said other stars have planets that orbit them. This was scientifically untrue at the time, as there was no empirical evidence of it, and evidence to the contrary. You would have him censored. And this is where this particular subthread ends, because Dev has no counter-argument to that. To the fact that society could simply have the facts wrong, and that his position would ultimately result in people who were legitimately correct being censored on the grounds that they were somehow lying, and that lying is not somehow free speech. But as previously mentioned, this is far from the only subthread with regards to this discussion. As moving on to another subthread, Paulo Araujo responds to Dev by stating, quote, the post you are agreeing with is talking about banning speeches. To which Dev responds with that one quote tweet that we already saw before. Quote, 1. Free speech doesn't apply to blatant lies, and that is the one thing the right peddles in abundance right now. 2. I am more interested in the terrible actions of the right now, as they are currently wielding power to do bad things. Paulo responds by stating, quote, free speech does apply to blatant lies, at least in the United States, citing United States versus Alvarez. This was over the Stolen Valor Act of 2005, as Mr. Alvarez falsely claimed to have been a recipient of the Medal of Honor, though he does not appear to have done this for financial gain or as some sort of attempt to ruin someone else's reputation. For the record, the US...
No, that's irrelevant. If I understood correctly, somebody took false valor, no, instantly jail. It's done. It's done. I don't care. The military is just keeping us safe. Those are people who deserve their things. They actually worked for it. And if some scumbag just takes something, steals valor, I don't care. Jail. For at least 10 years. I do not care about that person. It's just shitty to do. You cannot compare yourselves to people that risk their lives for us all. Just get the fuck out.
Supreme Court did indeed rule that that particular act, at least the original 2005 version, was indeed unconstitutional because it violated the First Amendment's free speech clause, as Mr. Alvarez does not appear to have lied as an attempt at fraud or slander, meaning he wasn't trying to harm people by conning them out of their hard-earned money or by slandering their reputation.
Yeah, that's so irrelevant. This is why people just make fun of... It's stolen valor, no matter what. Even if you didn't do it maliciously, it's irrelevant. Of course, if it was a joke in a bar, that's something different. But if somebody pretends to actually do those things, you always profit from that, because then you can tell a story and be seen as a hero and profit from that. It's still a scam no matter what.
He was simply lying about his own accomplishments. By all means, feel free to criticize Mr. Alvarez for the lies he did push. It's just that what he said shouldn't constitute a crime because it is, for what it's worth, still protected under the First Amendment, provided he doesn't try to use it to con people or slander someone else.
No, I disagree on this one no matter what. This shouldn't fall under freedom of speech. Things that just steal the valor of somebody else or make a lie, an obvious lie like this, or something that actually profits you to a very high degree. No, I disagree with this one.
The big factor here is actual legitimate harm, in the form of conning people or wrongfully ruining their reputation. Dev responds with, quote, 1. No, there's a reason slander is illegal, and perjury. 2. You didn't read this case, did you? You know it's not a blanket all lies are protected ruling, right? 3. Even if it was, I disagree with it. I won't defend blatant lies using free speech principles. So there you have it. Somebody died and made Dev the wholly unquestionable god of the truth.
Yep.
You cannot disagree with Dev's truth, because you must be lying and therefore that is not protected speech according to Dev, the sacred arbiter of what is and is not free speech, placed even above the US Supreme Court in his authority. And I will cover the other points Dev tries to make here and counter them, but
yeah, as much as it pains me that I agree on this one specifically, maybe for other reasons, but no, just Stolen Vera is for me way worse than anything else. Than somebody claiming that he had 100 Chupa Chupses somewhere. It's just not even comparable. It's not. I wouldn't give a fuck if somebody like claimed something. Well, if it's not as influential, but Veller, no. You just spit in the face of every single veteran that ever fought in an actual war.
I believe that is...
I just disagree. I disagree even with the United States about with the court. No.
best done later on, partially to further demonstrate what his position exactly is before we completely dismantle it. So with that said, let's move on. As Paulo responds by stating, quote, "Never claimed it was a blanket rule. You made that up. The ruling means it's not true is not grounds to censor free speech just by itself. Free speech doesn't stop applying to someone just because it is a blatant lie. You need more than that to justify censoring. This is an important distinction, since your claim was free speech doesn't apply to blatant lies, which means you made a blanket statement, the thing you're accusing me of doing. Free speech doesn't automatically stop applying because the speech in question is blatant lies." To which Dev responds by stating, quote,
Paulo Arroyo, I agree with him to a high part, but a lie could destroy your life. Didn't we have enough of just blatant lies made up about people who work every day that are awarded some woman or assaulted them, or a child that's not of a different guy, or that's from a different guy, and then the woman lied. Those lies aren't fucking free speech. Those lies are freaking can destroy people's lives. I'm gonna be honest. If something's so blatant, just no. I disagree on the life thing with my full heart. I disagree with Dev because he is coming from a point. Even though we have actually the same endgame that a lie shouldn't be free speech, but I come from a angle where the lies that could actually destroy a life shouldn't be free speech, no matter what. I don't care about it. If you can negatively influence a life, to that degree. No. There are exceptions. And as I said, if you claim that you did something petty, I don't care. Claim that you saved a pigeon from a freaking crocodile on out of water. Don't care. But claim that somebody R-worded you and spreading that lie, that's not free speech. That's definitely not free speech in my opinion. No. Never gonna agree with that one. Never. Because this is just it's the thing is this argumentation about Paulo, as I understand it at least, is just a small fraction of everything. It's just no.
Hold on, I never said it's not true. I said it's a lie. If you say something that isn't,
those are. Yeah, 5 seconds in and Dev is fucking up again. What? Are you stupid, man? What's the difference between saying something that's true and something's a lie? That's the exact same thing. The context is the important part. It's not true equals a lie. Simple as that. Or am I crazy here? Honestly, is this something different? Am I not understanding something? Is not true, that's a lie. What the... Okay, fair enough.
True, and yet you believe it to be true, it's not a lie. You're just wrong. If you know something is untrue and you still say it, it is a lie, and your speech shouldn't be respected. Paulo responds by stating, quote, "It shouldn't be respected, but it should be protected." As per the Supreme Court ruling, that it being a lie is not enough justification for it to not be free speech. People do have the right to lie. It simply being a lie is not enough for it to not be protected. Also, you brought up slander and perjury being illegal as examples, so that's just proving that there is no need to add more censorship on top. Those things are already illegal, and the reason they're illegal is not their lies. Dev responds by asking, quote, "Why are they illegal?" Paulo responds by stating, quote, "Not because they're lies, since the Supreme Court ruled that something simply being a lie is not enough for it to not be protected. I already explained this, not sure what you are confused about." Dev responds by stating, quote, "I didn't ask for non-reasons, I asked for reasons. Why are they illegal?" Jeremiah replies by stating, quote, "Slander is illegal because it is a lie and has provable financial/social damaging effects. Perjury is illegal because it is a lie under the specific context of the justice system where you are legally obligated to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth." This particular subthread ends here, but there is more to it with another subthread, so...
Maybe I'm just... I mean, I agree with Jeremiah yeah, this makes more sense than just calling them lies. This is actually the context that I missed beforehand. Yes. Slander and such isn't... Yes, it's illegal. Good. Fair enough. Good. Now with Jeremiah, I agree wholeheartedly. Good.
Let's continue. As Paulo separately responds to Dev by stating, quote, "Your claim was free speech doesn't apply to blatant lies. The mere fact that the Supreme Court ruled that something simply being a lie is not enough for it to not be protected already proves you wrong." Dev asks, quote, "For the third time, why are perjury and slander illegal?" Mooncake responds by stating, quote, "Because it has to affect the victim a negative impact financially or socially with proper evidence." Dev replies with, quote, "That applies to slander, but not perjury." Mooncake responds with, quote, "My bad, teacher. Perjury can get someone in jail or punished falsely, impacting the justice system." Dev responds with, quote, "How does it falsely impact the..."
And the thing is, I hate it when I have... The negatively impacted part just doesn't sit well with me. Because a lie normally negatively impacts your life. Normally. It might be in small ways, but it negatively impacts, or it could negatively impact it.
justice system. Mooncake replies with, I meant as in it is a false statement weaponizing the justice system against someone you don't like and falsely putting them in jail, MB Chief. Dev responds with, sounds like lying's a big part of this determination. Mooncake replies with, quote, yes, I agree blatant lying, especially in the justice system, should be punished. I don't think normal lies should be punished like Dev kisses men, because it's hard to disprove whether or not I believe that, truly or not, but if it turns out to be false and harms you, then I deserve punny. That is where this particular subthread in...
What the fuck? So I actually agree with Mooncake. The entire shebang I said beforehand was for none. Well, that was a bit of a time waste. Well, irrelevant. Fair enough.
But wait, there's more. As in a separate subthread, Paulo responds to his previous claim with also, quote, I don't care in the slightest to answer that question, by the way, because that would be changing the subject. The claim being discussed here is free speech doesn't apply to blatant lies, which is factually incorrect. Paulo also follows with saying, quote, not being answered, the claim being discussed here is free speech doesn't apply to blatant lies, which is factually incorrect. You're moving away from your incorrect claim to try to change the subject. Dev replies with answer or not balls. Paulo replies with, quote, this discussion is about the fact that Dev made an incorrect claim, by the way. He claimed free speech doesn't apply to blatant lies, which is factually incorrect. This is what is being discussed. Dev replies with, quote, yeah, free speech doesn't. I didn't say the First Amendment doesn't apply to blatant lies. It shouldn't, by the way. But if it does, that's not even the claim I'm making. This is a convo about morals right now. Unquote. So with that all covered, there are several problems with Dev's line of reasoning. For a start, despite his claims that this is just a discussion about morals, bro, let's not forget that this began with him agreeing with the idea of conservatives getting censored, and those that Dev deems to be more extreme being outright banned altogether. That right there shows that this is not just a conversation about morality. Instead, it is very much a conversation about legality, about making politicized laws as a punitive measure against those that Dev disagrees with. So his claim about this just being morals, bro? Yeah, that's just a lie on his part. Another good example of Dev being dishonest is his attempt to distinguish the argument that he has presented that lies are not protected under the confines of free speech from the argument that lies are not protected by the First Amendment, which is another case of dishonesty on the part of Dev, because in the court case of United States versus Alvarez, the section of the First Amendment that the Supreme Court cited for why the law in question was unconstitutional was that it violated the free speech clause of the First Amendment. The Stolen Valor Act was not accused of violating Mr. Alvarez's rights to free press, free religion, the right to assemble, or the right to petition. It was accused and indeed guilty of violating his right to free speech. So Dev trying to make this little distinction here is simply him obfuscating the truth and trying to deceive the reader in order to make himself sound smarter than he actually is. Thirdly, let's cover Dev's argument that lies are not protected speech because perjury and slander exist. This is, in fact, a logical fallacy on Dev's part. Specifically, this is a cum hoc ergo propter hoc fallacy. With this, therefore, because
Prompto ergo. What the fuck? I need to look this one up. What the fuck?
Of this. The false idea that perjury and slander are crimes because they are lies, when in reality it's because they cause actual harm to someone's reputation, in the case of slander, or in the case of perjury, deliberately misleading a court case in which someone's freedom and potentially very life may be at stake. Point is, what perjury and slander, as well as fraud, all have in common, that actually matters and actually makes them crimes, is that they cause very tangible damage to others. But to further demonstrate just how much of a logical fallacy this is, allow me to provide Dev's own
By the way, I still don't agree with this, now that I think about it. The other point is that you might say, yeah, it really harms the person. Mentally, a lie can also harm your basic lifestyle. It can induce a high amount of stress over time, and just make you unable to work or different things, even if it's something that didn't directly influence you. It still has the potential of actually harming people. Even if you say something like the thing that Mooncake said, that death kisses men, and it's a lie, but death just goes on in a spiral and destroys his life because of it, wasn't that a harm done to him? It's maybe indirect, but it's still harm that was done by it. I wouldn't go as far as that, because then people can claim that I called someone a girl, even because she thinks she's a boy and she went into a depression, then it's, of course, people could overdo it, but still, it was still harm done. So I still, it's just... it's a thing.
Reasoning to the truth. Consider, for example, the fact that leaking classified information is also a crime that just so happens to require telling the truth. Thus, by Dev's own
yeah, but sadly, leaking only classified information by the state, by the way. Not every state in America is like that, but in a lot of those, doxing is actually allowed. Yeah. Still part of that free speech thing. So yeah, free speech has its negatives. I am also against actually censoring too much. But some things, logically speaking, should be in there.
Logic, telling the truth is not protected speech either, because leaking classified information requires telling the truth, and leaking classified information is a crime. Therefore, the act of telling the truth must be criminalized as far as Dev is concerned, or at the very least not properly protected by the confines of free speech.
Yeah, fair enough.
And yes, that is Dev's own reasoning being utilized against him, to demonstrate just how lobotomized his argument is. As an aside, and as a means of providing the correct answer to this particular conundrum, there is another thing that leaking classified documents has, which itself shares with fraud, perjury, and slander, unlike the truth that leaking classified documents has, which is completely in contradiction to lying, which perjury, slander, and fraud all have in common. What all of these crimes do have in common is the fact that they all cause harm. Actual, tangible, measurable harm. Measured in monetary damages, or in some cases, even human lives. And this is a correlation that naturally tracks more strongly than claiming that perjury, slander, and fraud are illegal because they're lies, or that leaking classified documents is illegal because it's the truth. But oh wait, it of course gets far, far worse once you start getting into the logistics of what Dev is advocating for here. For a start, the sheer act of arguing that lies are unprotected speech and should be therefore criminalized requires by extension turning the government into an arbiter of what is and is not the truth. Meaning that for the logistical bureaucratic needs, you would quite literally require a ministry of truth in order to enforce such a system. Yes, Dev is seriously taking up the position.
By the way, I am against this. This is just bollocks. You shouldn't have that. That's way too much power for that. No, a ministry of truth would be terrible. It's not a good idea. No, don't give more power to the state. But also, I still think that arguing those points is still important. At the end of the day, if we stop arguing about it, we will fall.
That Oceania from 1984 was a good idea and a good system, the sort of system that he wants, because that would be absolutely essential to make what Dev wants into reality, the idea that lies are not protected speech, which is also really ironic in its own right given the sheer number of times that Dev openly lied throughout the course of this discussion, meaning that of course the sword of censorship would inevitably fall upon him. But hey, he's fallen for the exact allure of power power that the progressives before him have, like the little fascist that he is. But even then, there is another factor I need to bring up, just to show how far-reaching Dev's argument is here when taken to its natural conclusion. Consider this for a moment. Technically speaking, all fiction, all works of fiction, are lies. Now granted, they are lies that the vast majority of people know for a fact to be lies.
As I said, if we go that far, claiming that you stole a Chupa Chups should also be...
But they are still, technically speaking, lies. Lies that those that engage with such media willfully choose to immerse themselves in, often as a form of escapism. But yet, the sheer fact that they are lies, technically speaking, means that according to Dev's argument and Dev's own position, they don't have the right to exist. They are not protected under the confines of free speech. And yes, this is a complete 180 from his previous position over that video with regards to the No Mercy controversy, but still, at the end of the day, that is ultimately the argument he is making here. That because No Mercy is a work of fiction and therefore a lie, that it isn't protected under the confines of free speech. That it is unprotected speech that doesn't have a right to exist. This whole...
I think Ace is reaching here, because this falls under the, or I think at least, it falls under the mention or under fiction, and this basically just says there are fat up stories or a story itself, so you know it's basically made up. I think it's just part of the story, or yeah, made up tales, so basically know what you're going into. So I would disagree. Maybe it's a bit far-reaching here, but I understand the core of the point. And I would agree with the core of what Ace is actually saying.
The whole situation is yet another example of why Dev is simply unworthy of anyone's trust or respect at this point. And this is yet more evidence of Dev just being an open fascist, a legitimate champion of Mussolini's ideology. For the government, you see, is God to Dev. For the government, he believes, should be the great arbiter of the truth, and criminalize the very act of lying itself. And what is lying, you ask? Well, that's up for the government to decide. After all, everything within the state, nothing outside the state, and nothing against the state, so says the great political philosophers that Dev now follows. But again, to anyone that's been paying even the slightest bit of attention for the past year now, this shouldn't come as a surprise at all. Dev is, after all, the exact same individual who decided to argue that the Weaver household was ultimately in the wrong with regards to the Ruby Ridge standoff.
By the way, that was a disgusting take of Dev. You can say a lot about the family at Ruby Ridge, that they did mistakes, but not that they deserved what they got. Those poor people, for F's sake, just getting executed basically like animals there. It was disgusting.
You know, the standoff where the government had to later admit in court that it was, in fact, the one that was in the wrong. Turns out there is in fact a way to get Dev to disagree with the government. Just provide an example of the government admitting that it was in the wrong and overstepped its authority. At which point you will simply get Dev coming out to defend the actions of the government and claim that everyone else was in the wrong instead. You know, the sort of thing that a fascist would disagree with the government on. Things that just so happen to restrict the power of the almighty government. Or as another example, Dev disagreeing with a Supreme Court ruling that determined that no, lying is itself not enough to be placed outside the confines of protected speech, and that the First Amendment does, in fact, give you the right to lie. And by extension, the government does not have the right to create a Ministry of Truth in order to combat lies. Which again would be absolutely necessary from a logistical and bureaucratic standpoint in order to criminalize the act of lying itself. Once again, this is the kind of ruling that a fascist would disagree with, and so it is therefore absolutely zero.
No. I won't let myself being called a fascist just because I disagree with the ruling of the freaking Veller thing. No. You can go suck a penis. No, but my take is basically that lies shouldn't be protected speech if they harm people to a high degree. Actually, a bit higher than the freaking rules are right now, because I think they are too pussy whipped. But definitively lies shouldn't be protected speech in any kind of way. It also shouldn't be a consequence. I mean, if you go out and just say that somebody's hair is pretty, even if it's not, of course, don't hunt that person down. But if you're going out, slandering someone and saying, or not just slandering, I mean, just saying behind the back of others, lies, spreading the manipulation, telling things that are untrue, let's just say, yeah, she effed 100 dudes at this day and point. No, that speech shouldn't be protected. Now, should it be severely punished? No, but it should be punished in a way. Because in my opinion, that's not free speech anymore. It's aimed at harming.
Grow surprised that Dev once again disagrees with it, and instead chooses to openly endorse state-sponsored violence against his political opposition. Now, for those curious, I will of course be providing links in the description below to the various subthreads, so you can check them out for yourself if you should so desire. But in any case...
Yep. I still think that Ace was quite on point on a lot of things. The thing is, I just disagree on some points with the lying thing. I'm not as extreme as Dev that I would freaking go over, hey, delete everything just because you said something untrue to a certain degree and give the state more power. But still, I will disagree until my freaking unalive day 2. Until my phylactery runs dry. That the stolen valor thing should be punished more harshly. This is just something that I cannot accept. For me, at least. I have to accept because I can't do anything against it, but for me personally, nah. As it is, acolytes, good night.